we sort of expanded the scope of work. So whenever we take up any project, we like to expand the scope of work and see what greater impact the project can make in its surroundings. So you can see that there is an interior, but we also did the landscape design, and we added this kind of glass canopy to the front, which is a butterfly truss, and that's the process. Another material that really inspires us is fabric, because it's so soft, and it has this flowing form which can't entirely be controlled. So at some point you have to relinquish control and let the material do its own thing, and let the material take control. So this started as a workshop called Cloud Machine back at the DRL, and then it sort of evolved into different projects that we did. So we designed a canopy here, which has these rigid members, which are the curved members are rigid, and then you have the soft four-way stretch lycra, which is fabric. So this is a really peculiar system. You can call it a tensegrity system, in which the rigid members are non-structural and the fabric is actually structural. So at any point, if you were to snip any part of the fabric, the entire system would collapse, because the fabric is what is structural and holding it together. And these are some of the details with the fabric. And years later, we were asked to design a mosque. We call it a micro mosque, within 2 parking spaces of a really old apartment building in Hyderabad. And we decided to again apply fabric, because the space was really limited, and also we wanted to keep it really minimalistic, and just highlight one wall, which is the orientation device towards Makkah. So this was the wall that we created, and here we used the help of upholsterers or sofa makers to realize this. So it's a computationally designed frame, and then we have the fabric stitched into place. It's four-way stretch lycra, so it stretches in 4 directions. And it also, at some point you have to let go, as I said, of the geometry, or of the shape of the material, and the material itself takes its own form, and it stretches in different ways. This is the process. You can see the 2 parking spaces, and this was made for the month of Ramadan as a charity project for elderly residents of this building, to be able to offer their night prayers. Sorry, I think the sound is not working. So this is the mosque, and you can see that light really adds another dimension to the space, and sort of elevates the space at different times of the day, be it its own diffused light, or sunlight that's falling onto the fabric. This is another fun project that we did. We call it the hexaplex. So this is a seat for children at this point. It's kind of like a beanbag, but it's every level or every surface has different patterns. Cleaning it, it will seem like it's infinitely folding, or infinitely rotating overhead. So we believe that architecture and design are not the product of just one mind, but many minds and many hands can come together to create something that is much greater than the sum of its individual parts. When we work together, we create something that individually we cannot imagine. So the Fractals Workshop is one initiative in this direction. The Fractals Workshop is a generative design and form finding workshop using computation as well as analog algorithms. And it's inspired by fractals in nature, or the forms in nature, or the growth patterns of geometry in nature. The Fractals Workshop has been, it's been to many places all over the world. It's been on the cover of Surface Photo magazine and others. So this is a workshop in which we have all these different agents working in the same space, working together to explore geometry, which is based on computation as well as on natural systems. And then at the end of it, we usually have an exhibition in the same space. We use many different materials. This is an example of straws, as I had said earlier, because we were planning to translate some of the selections or some of the selected models from this workshop into real scale, real material models for Hyderabad Design Week and the World Design Assembly, which happened in 2019. And we were actually commissioned to design several urban installations for the city of Hyderabad for hosting this event. And we decided that instead of, we as an architecture studio would get a lot of different opportunities to do this. So instead, we turned the spotlight onto the students, and we wanted the students to be able to design something for the city and have their mark on the city. So we conducted a series of different workshops, practical workshops all over the city involving students of architecture and interior design. And then we selected some of these to be built at full scale. So in this process, the students learned from the fabricators learned from the students. So it was a participatory design and build process, which involved many minds and many hands. And this we call the Peacock. It's entirely designed by students of my alma mater, CSIIT, and it's located near the Telangana State Assembly and the Public Gardens. Still located there today. And we shifted towards the use of locally sourced natural materials to be more sustainable. And we find that there are many age-old ways that people have been working with natural materials. And we started to question how we can adapt these traditional techniques to parametric design or computationally driven design or to complex geometry. So this is a series of workshops in which we conducted at SET, at VIT Vellore, and in Dubai as well, where students explored geometry from by using natural materials like cane and bamboo. So this is a series of 8 pavilions that were built back in 2016, I think, at VIT Vellore in bamboo. So the students, we brought bamboo. Of course, we sourced bamboo, but we also brought bamboo workers and craftspersons to teach the students how to work with the material. And the students actually came up with really sort of dynamic and unconventional forms using algorithms, which they themselves created. This is another example of an urban installation. We call this the Wevex. This is located in Dubai Design District. It's a permanent installation there. This was commissioned as part of Dubai Design Week. And here we used the local material, which is date palm midrib, or arish, which is how it's locally known. And we created this hyperbolic paraboloid structure in that material, which has not been done before. And we created this, we designed this installation. This is Helix 1.0. So we started to work with or learn from cane furniture makers in Hyderabad for Hyderabad Design Week. And we understood their processes and their ways of working with cane, and we created this installation. So as you can see, the different local materials in Vellore, Dubai, and Hyderabad, and different craftspersons who work with those materials are the ones who participated and who taught us how to work with the material, whereas we worked on the design process with the students. So for the India Architecture and Design Biennale, we've been commissioned to design another Helix 2.0, and this time we learned further. So from the previous maybe mistakes or failures of the previous installations, we were able to learn more and apply it in a better way. So we made this in Hyderabad and we shipped it to Delhi, and it's now at the Red Fort at before barracks. You can go and check it out if you're ever going for the exhibition. And what we really like is on the left side the kind of the joinery and the details, the same kind that they use in furniture, has been applied to this installation. Also, this is a computationally designed installation, and I want to make clear one thing: computational design doesn't necessarily mean using a computer. It doesn't necessarily. It's a computational way of thinking. So you're thinking in an algorithmic manner. An algorithm can be analog. It doesn't have to be digital. It doesn't have to involve parametric software or programs. So it can be done manually, but it can also be done using some sort of programming. So what we did here was we used ChatGPT to help us write a code. So we know how to code, but we also need somebody to help us, figure out where the code is going wrong. So ChatGPT really did a great job with that, and we were able to create or replicate the helix using processing. And you can see the mathematical sort of geometry that's been created, and that's been replicated in Cave. And I would like to invite all of you to visit our exhibition, Samatva. So I'm one of, I think, around 80 women who have been selected for this exhibition of women in architecture. It's in B4 Barracks, and some of our work is displayed there. The work of Fractals, the Fractals workshop as well. So alongside projects that we've done as DesignAware, we also ran a Fractals workshop just before coming here, and we generated, or students generated, all of these different geometries, and then we shipped them along with our other models to be displayed at the exhibition. And as I said, it's kind of a dance between the analog and the digital. It's going back and forth between these two sort of interfaces. And so this is something that a previous student created at Boston Architectural College, where I teach, in virtual reality. And coming to a few of our projects, this is a really tiny house. We call it Ribbon House. It is really narrow. This was the existing site, which had a row of rooms there, and then we had to demolish those and build a house there. So this was a house for a brother and a sister, two different families, to kind of a double duplex or a quadruplex, if you will. And we had to come up with solutions for how do we get in ventilation. And most importantly, there were these neem trees on the site that were really old, and they were existing on site, and we wanted to preserve those trees. So we designed the entire house around these trees. So this is some of our ideation or our conceptual design process, in which we work with blocks, we work with cutting out different spaces and placing them together, color coding. So this is part of our design process, and you can see that the tree remains constant in that, because we wanted to preserve the tree. And on all three sides, except the front, this plot was kind of abutted by different neighboring buildings. And throughout the design process, we also make a lot of physical models at different scales. So you can see that there's a larger scale and a smaller scale model, and they're stacked, and we can kind of remove them, take them apart, and put them together again, and figure out how the spaces should be sort of laid out. And this, so finally, this is the two floors, or two floors are one unit, and then the upper two floors are the next unit for the brother and the sister. And you can do these out, and then the front we sort of took a little bit of setback and created the garden, so that we have a private garden. And this is located near the Qutb Shahi tombs in Hyderabad, which is one of the world's largest mausoleum complexes from the Qutb Shahi dynasty, who are the founders of Hyderabad. So you can see how the house is situated in that neighborhood, and in fact, the two houses came up in that space in, next to the house in this time. So we should probably edit that. So with this project, these are small tools, these things, and you really want us to be in charge of the entire process. So with this, this was for us a design and build project, and these are some of the scenes from the construction site, and also during construction. One thing that we really try to do, apart from bringing in ventilation from the top, is also to reuse some of the material that was the raw material or the wastage, especially of stone on site. So we created these mosaic floorings at different places, especially because the site is so small that full flooring was not possible in some places, like the winders of the staircase are really oddly shaped. So for that, we created these mosaic crazy paving from the wastage of the material on site. And I don't know why that video got flipped, but we also used augmented reality to create this wall. So in order to build this wall, the wall was designed in such a way that, you know, this is the only opening that we could have on the neighboring side, and we wanted to create a perforated wall which has these openings that start to open from the second floor onwards. The lower two floors were we couldn't have any openings. So we have these blocks which rotate at different angles as you go up. So you have more privacy below, and you have less privacy on the upper floor, and more light coming in. So we use the tool Follogram, which is an augmented reality tool, which allows us to use our smartphone to guide the angles of placement of each of the blocks. Because it would be very difficult for the mason to actually read the drawing, measure the angles at every level. So this makes it easier because it superimposes the drawing. I hope you can see. It's actually the 3D model. It superimposes the model from Rhino onto the site, and you're able to sort of align the blocks according to the model. And folding becomes a kind of recurring motif in this project. So we have, you can see on the top, we have these strips which are like ribbons. So the facade is like a ribbon facade, but we also have folding in the gate and in this internal or interior sort of partition, which we call fold. And we also employed the use of the AI tool Stable Diffusion for ideating the facade and ideating different spaces. So initially, we just started to make paper models, strips of paper, which are folded at different angles and intertwined, and that's how the facade was developed. But later, we understood that we can just take this image and sort of ideate more spaces and imagine other things using that one really interesting composition. So we used Midjourney and Stable Diffusion Dream Studio to imagine other spaces, but also imagine the facade on the right side there. So this is how the completed facade of Ribbon House looks, the ribbon facade, and then you can compare it to the paper model on the right side, which guided the entire process. And the facade is made of steel, strips of steel which are bent at different angles, and then they're assembled together. And also Midjourney allows you to sort of create different variations of the facade or of any sort of aggregation. So this is when we were just getting a laptop fixed. This is just a quick sketch on notes. The notes app, and put into Midjourney, and then you're able to sort of create. And this is an older version of Midjourney, which is I think version 4. Now we have higher versions. So with Ribbon House, we also got into construction, as I said, and we created this, or we started this initiative called Build-A-Ware, because we started to see more and more demand for us to do design as well as construction, or design and execution or fabrication. This allows us to have greater control over the fabrication and construction process, not just in terms of quality and optimization, but more importantly because most of our designs are really complex geometries or complex materials and material manipulation. So that's something that is not currently done by contractors, and it's really difficult for them to understand our designs. So we wanted to get that and be able to execute them, and that's why we started Build-A-Ware. And whenever we start any initiative, we also have an educational component to it. So along with Build-A-Ware, we started Studio to Site, which was a long-term program taking students of architecture and interior design, engineering, and young professionals to the construction site. And we provide them access to the site at different stages so that they can get a hands-on kind of learning on the site, because this is something I think maybe things have changed now, but since I was a student, that was something that I was really feeling that was missing in our education system. We were really focused on the studio, but not enough on the site and on fabrication and execution. And even as a young professional, when I was working in a studio in an office for somebody else, I rarely got to go to the site, and that's an opportunity that I would like to create for other students, and take them to the site and have them learn the process, but also get confident about what's going on site, because the owner of the project is the designer and the architect. They should be able to dictate what works and what doesn't work on site, and only if you know how it's done, you can do it. And also, I think as designers and architects, we should think about the future life of the building as well. So this is Ribbon House seen from above, and it's sort of almost, we imagine that it instigates other green roofs that are happening all around the neighborhood. This was actually our client's idea, and we sort of generated that using Adobe Firefly to see, to sort of show how in the future, if we green our roof, maybe the neighbors also start to see it, and all of the roofs in that area become green. And finally, this is the project that we're most known for. This is the Golconda Fort. It's more than 800 years old, located on the Deccan Plateau, and you can see rocks in the foreground, which are more than 250 million years old, which are a feature of the Deccan Plateau. And I love this image because it has both our built heritage and our natural heritage in one image. So we were asked to design a charity school for children from disadvantaged backgrounds inside the outer walls of the Golconda Fort. So here you can see the satellite image of Golconda Fort, and you can see the wall there. So the fort has inner walls and it has outer walls. The outer walls actually contain the city. So before Hyderabad was founded, it was Golconda, and that's where the city originated from. So that's almost the oldest part of the city of Hyderabad. So, and it had many dynasties ruling over it subsequently. This is our site, and this is where it was located. And you can see that it's a very, very dense, low-rise, high-density sort of neighborhood inside the fort walls. You might be wondering why this lower part is not built on. If you know the Deccan, you know that that is because it's extremely steep. So that's why it's not built on. Otherwise, everything else is completely covered. And that's how it looks from above. And this is just from the satellite image, just a quick sketch to show you how it existed before we got involved on this in this project. There was an existing mosque, a playground, and then there was a lower level. So because this is on top of the mountain, it was actually at the edge of a cliff. So there are two levels. The site is kind of divided vertically into two different levels. What you see in orange is the upper level, and what you see in white is the lower level. So the site has two different heights to it, and then what's in the dotted line is the existing courtyard house, which was demolished and taken in so that there would be access from the lower road as well, or the lane. And it's really, really dense, which I'll be showing you. And there was an existing retaining wall separating the two levels, which later came down. That's the site, that's me. And then there's the existing courtyard house on one side, the retaining wall on the other side, and the rest of the upper part of the site is on the left side. And it's almost like a wall of rock or a cliff that runs through the site itself. So it was a very, very challenging project in terms of understanding the site and trying to see what we can do with the site and trying to respond to the site. So we call this lower part, we call it lower ground, and the upper one we call it upper ground. And its upper ground is 20 feet above the lower ground, which is 2 floors of height above. And on the upper ground they had already built, it's pretty old, the existing space. So they had this retaining wall and the playground, and sort of it was flattened, filled with soil. So it was almost like a box of soil that was filled and created this flat space. Otherwise, nothing over there is flat. So they had to artificially create that. So this was existing many years before we got involved. And you can see the Golconda Fort in the background, the Qutub Shahi tombs, as I mentioned earlier, from Ribbon House, that's also located there. And it's a really scenic and a really beautiful location for the school. There was an existing mosque and an existing large hall, like a warehouse kind of shed, where the existing school was before. And this is the context. So, as I said earlier, we learn from the principles. So whenever we start a project, we want to just define the principles first, understand the process that we're going to be employing, and learn from the context. And so in this, one thing was that we wanted to preserve the trees that were existing on site, the rock. We didn't want to damage any of the rock that would be coming onto our site, and to retain the terrain that existed. Because the students, as you can see the little kid up there, they live around this area. Their houses are nestled among the rocks, so they're really used to climbing the rock and navigating the rugged terrain. Even though these are city urban kids, they're still kind of living in the wild up there. So also you see a lot of goats there, and also the teachers were regularly teaching under the trees, which is our traditional method of learning, and we wanted to preserve that as well by preserving the existing playground. And you can see the lane there. It's really narrow and steep. So we had to do extensive site survey, level surveys and rock profiling to understand what the site was like and where we could build and where we couldn't build. So we made many different models. Even with all of this, we failed completely getting a proper picture of the site and understanding exactly how the site is. So we had to take a lot of these design decisions on site while construction was going on. So this is how the school situates itself in that context. And it is actually, there is no form that was dictated by us, but the form was dictated by the site itself. So the school kind of grows out of what is available in the site and responds to the site. So we have the existing mosque, this is the context. We have 2 entrances, one from the lower ground, which we call it 0 level, and 20 feet or 6 meters, which is about 2. And that leads you to the playground. So that's how the school is seen from above. You can see the lower entrance, the courtyard house, the narrow entrance of the courtyard house used to be, which has been included into the school. And then you have the upper entrance and the mosque and the playground, and the old school. So just to simplify, this is how the plan grows and shrinks in response to the rock. So the lower ground, we had to reduce the size of the footprint of the building there because the rock was coming in, and then increase it in the middle ground because the retaining wall was brought down by really heavy rain, we were able to excavate that part and get extra space. And then the upper ground, which is now the highest part of the school. This is how it looks from below. And we wanted to, because it's a really dense neighborhood, we wanted to negate this sort of, the colorful walls of the neighborhood. Usually, Indian sort of neighborhoods are really, really colorful. All the houses are self-designed and self-built, and they're really kitschy and sort of vying for attention. So in order to negate this, we wanted to keep the walls of the school bare, and they were internally in exposed concrete. And this also brings down the maintenance of the school. Because this is a charity school, it's very important for us to bring down maintenance costs of the school. So we kept the walls unpainted. And this space, which is the entrance, actually pays homage to the courtyard house that existed before. It's kind of creating or recreating that courtyard by having the ventilation from the top into that space. And also, as I said earlier, we had to do a lot of redesign or take a lot of design decisions on site while the construction was going on. So that's something that's happening there, just sketching on the concrete itself. And we created this bridge that connects the narrow part of the school to the wider part. And this is inspired by the chhatta, or these bridges that I think again the right side is not visible completely, but you see these old lanes in Hyderabad, which have tiny bridges which go over the lane, connecting two buildings or the same building, connecting with a tiny bridge over the lane. It's called a chhatta or a damdama locally. So we were inspired by that and created the bridge there. So the rock embraces the building, the school embraces the rock at different points. So the rock sort of becomes the part of the building. And this is not something unique to our school. This is very, very common in the rocky areas of Hyderabad, where you will see a lot of rocks inside houses, and they become walls of houses. And so we were inspired by that, and we brought that in as well. So you can see that we haven't touched the rock, and we preserved it as it was. These are some scenes from the neighborhood. We sort of picked the color scheme from the kitschy, colorful neighborhood, and we decided that we would use primary colors in contrast with the concrete. So this is the model that we designed, which shows the different pops of color in the doors, the windows, the railings, the staircases, the skylights, and the furniture in different parts of the school, and the rest of the school is really bare. And I feel really sad to look at this picture because we had sent this model to be displayed at the Samadva exhibition, and it's broke. So we weren't able to display that. Hopefully we can make another one there. So yeah, so this is, now you can recognize the pops of color, the skylight, the staircase, etc. And also you can see the rock coming into the building at different parts, and sort of blending into the color similar to the walls. Coming back to participatory design, involving many people, this was one of those processes in which we remotely coordinated with the carpenter. So this was for the design of the library. So the library was, we sort of designed the rules or the systems for the library. So we gave a certain set of parameters, so you could call it, in a sense, parametric design, because we defined the parameters, which is the colors, the proportions of the shelves, and the sizes of the shelves, and some rules that say that the same color shouldn't be repeated, and so on and so forth. And we gave these rules to the carpenter, and the carpenter completed the design. So it's almost like you ran the program and you completed the design. And this is the coordination over WhatsApp with the carpenter when I was in Dubai. And so that's the library co-designed with the carpenter. So the reason why it has steps in it is because there's rock underneath. So when we started excavating this part of the site and the library was supposed to come up, they almost scrapped the library because one, they didn't have enough funds for books, and they also discovered all this rock underneath, which was like a piece of the cliff. And so we convinced the client to have this, what we had designed was just to keep the rock exposed and have the children sit on the rock and, sort of read the books. But they found it to be a little risky and not safe for the children, so this was the next best thing, where we just created steps. And so it's a very informal sort of library. And this entire school is really informal to encourage the students to learn and to enjoy learning and enjoy reading. So this is one of the only schools which they allow you to write on the walls. Because the walls are not painted, it doesn't matter, and they can very easily clean the wall. So because the library didn't have any books, we started this campaign called Make Progress Possible in the month of Ramadan, where charity is given. We collected books from different sources, and every year, the first year we received over 250 books, and every year we received different donations and different contributions, sports equipment, books, midday meals, and other things. And it runs as a campaign every year on social media. This is the north wall that brings in cool air from the north. And this is in no way a closed school. It's a semi-open kind of school. And that's the skylight that was designed computationally. It's again inspired by folding and origami. And as I said, we have to do a lot of work on the site itself, a lot of design decisions and response to the existing topography, but also because it's a charity school, we couldn't have formal sets of drawings and formal engagement of, say, the structural engineer here. So he's just explaining how to make the truss to our fabricator on the right side. And then you can see the prototype, a smaller scaled model, which shows the 3D geometry because they understand the 3D much better than the 2D drawing. That's how school situates itself in its context. And you can see the skylight, and we managed to preserve the playground. So it would have been really easy for us to build on the flatter part of the site, on the playground, but we decided to build on the more difficult, rocky part of the site in order to preserve this playground, which is an asset and a lung space in a city where playgrounds are becoming rare. That's the skylight brings in sunlight right into the center of the building and lights up the staircase as well. So this is the topmost level of school, but you can also directly enter it as well. We also designed the logo, and the logo you can see that it kind of mimics the way the building is structured above and below the ground. These are some of the images that show transformation, and you can see this is the old shed which had different partitions in it and really sort of uninspiring and colorless sort of atmosphere, which is really dark. Unfortunately, this is how charity schools generally are, and they shouldn't be. This is the new classroom in 2017. That's the old building that we saw from the inside. And then in a participatory design process, the teachers themselves redesigned that whole building into a nursery and kindergarten block. So we designed the new building, and the old building was in response designed by the teachers. This is before construction. You can see the retaining walls during construction. And this is a school that was occupied even before it was completed. Because the need was so pressing for the students to have space, they started to use the school while it was under construction. So when there was no skylight, the rain would come inside and they would play in the rain inside the school. And also you can see that they continue to learn outdoors as they did before. 17, and then finally it was completed. It was actually completed in 2021. So this is an incremental or phase-wise design project or construction project because of the lack of funds. Um, as they raised funds, they started to build different parts of the school and complete it. And we are still connected to the school in some capacity. So that's the location of the school with greater context of the Golconda Fort. And the school, which we call Hilltop School, it's visited by students of architecture and design and architecture enthusiasts from all over the country. Almost every month we host different tours, but during the pandemic we couldn't do that, so we were a part of the virtual design festival of Dizine. And you can see, so I just put a GoPro on my head and I just walked around giving sort of walkthrough, a virtual walkthrough, and that can be seen on the Dizine YouTube channel. And it's also been published in the RIBA Rethink Design Guide, Architecture for a Post-Pandemic World, as a study on how schools should be designed after the pandemic. And this is to show you the context and the texture of this area. That's the Golconda Fort. You might be able to identify the Qutb Shahi tombs there. That's the end of the fort. So this texture and this, the way that we live with the rocks, we are really, really inspired by the texture of the rocks, their rigidity and their sort of composition. And we started to imagine different ways that the rock can be sort of reimagined using AI. I don't know why the video is getting flipped, but this is using Green Studio. We sort of have this composition of crumpled paper, which sort of looks like a rock, right? And so we entered this competition, which was called Regenerative Futures. It was the very first AI architectural design competition by Space 10, which is the design and research lab of IKEA. And so they asked us to design or imagine the house of the future and how houses in the future can look. And it was quite open-ended, so instead of creating futuristic, metallic futuristic glass skyscrapers, we decided to look at nature and how we can live symbiotically with nature. So instead of attaching something or adding something to nature, we decided to burrow into nature and carve in spaces. And historically, there have been so many dwellings that are carved into the rock. The Ajanta caves, and also this image from Cappadocia in Turkey, where they have these dwellings within the mountains that are carved out from the mountains and that are living symbiotically. So we decided to imagine that, and we created a whole catalog of future houses which are also built into the rockscape. Of course, as architects and designers, we do want to imagine sections as well. So these are some explorations of how sections could look from the journey. These are some images of how community comes together in these spaces. So they're neighborhoods and communities connected to each other with communal spaces and spaces of, self-sustainable spaces, growing their own food and cooking together, and more private. So we call this one the competition in futures and the symbiotic, and you can learn more about the workshop. And finally, I've been included in the book One I'm in, and that's probably available by the end of this month. And I'd like to leave you with this video which also you can see work of other brilliant architects who just happen to be women, and our video